The road is open. Today, workers around the world are the witnesses to scientific and technological advances. They are witnesses to the emergence of enormous wealth. So, why doesn't everyone have a job or enjoy a high standard of living without the burden of unemployment? Why don't their working hours decrease? Why don't they have more free time? What is preventing their ever-expanding needs from being met? This is a huge enterprise. This enterprise has a total of 280 organizations worldwide. It has a workforce of 360,000 employees spread across 140 countries. There are many enterprises like this. All the surrounding wealth belongs to the workers who create it, but they do not benefit from this wealth. It is the major shareholders, the bourgeois, who accumulate the majority of the wealth. They exploit economic resources and hinder economic progress. They are not required for the organization or operation of production. They usually own shares in the companies and profit from them, yet they don't even know where and what they produce. The problem at the heart of capitalism is its fundamental contradiction. The majority produces while a shrinking minority accumulates wealth. This contradiction results in exploitation, suffering, and low wages, which becomes evident in the form of uninsured jobs. Businesses are closing or merging, workers are being locked out. This contradiction leads to crises and sometimes even wars. In the relentless pursuit of profit, companies are seeking new markets, exploring energy resources, and aiming to compete for dominance in transportation routes. The only concern of capitalists is their domination and the continuous increase of their profits. Millions of workers in Greece and around the world are wondering, can this situation change? If yes, how? How can we get out of this barbarism? What drives people to stand up, to revolt? The Socialist October Revolution demonstrated the path.
Да здравствует братское доверие, боевой союз рабочих всех наций в борьбе за свержение капитала.
The October Revolution shook the world. That is when the hope of humanity was born. The old class. Russia ended the 19th century. It continues to be ruled by nobles and large landowners. Tsar Nicholas II is the largest landowner. He and his family own more than 75 million acres. All the top officials of the state, ministers, generals, and governors, are all nobles. They eat, drink, and live as the masters deserve. They have every reason not to make any major changes in the country. But even for them, the good times are over. Capitalism is constantly evolving. The new class. Already 1.5 million big bourgeois industrialists and merchants have emerged. They also desire the rapid development of capitalism in the agricultural economy. The Tsarist government prioritizes the interests of the landowners and nobles rather than the bourgeoisie when dealing with many problems. This is why the bourgeoisie opposes the government. But this opposition is still very limited. The bourgeoisie depends on the state for funding and financial assistance, including loans and grants to construct the railways. The bourgeoisie relies on the state for loans and grants, and they use this assistance to their advantage. Many landowners are beginning to join forces with the industrial sector. All of these large landowners, factory owners, and merchants share a common enemy: the rising working class, the damned. Giant industrial enterprises are emerging in the main cities of Moscow and Petrograd, which is making the working class the dominant social force in the country. Despite not being the majority of the population. Workers face the most brutal exploitation. They live in poverty, disease, and misery. Participating in strikes is considered as criminal offense. Under these conditions, they began to nurture new dreams. Workers fiercely demonstrated resistance, organization, and collective unity.
It takes a strong fire and icy cold to forge steel. That is how our generation took shape and learned not to surrender.
At the dawn of the 20th century, Russia at the turn of the century was tumultuous. Since the late 19th century, the revolutionary movement has been growing stronger. Social contradictions have become more intense. In the early years of the 20th century, Russia found itself in conflict with Japan and subsequently engaged in war with that country. Then came the economic crisis. Production was falling in almost all industries. There were many unemployed people in the cities. The agricultural economy in many regions was affected by drought, causing famines. On top of all this, the political atmosphere had become extremely tense. On January 3, 1905, 12,000 workers at the Putulov factory, which was the largest industrial enterprise in St. Petersburg, went on strike. This strike was sparked by the dismissal of 4 of their colleagues. This example was followed by others in the city. Workers from the factories participated. The workers marched to the Winter Palace to put forward their demands to the Tsar. 150,000 people congregated in the streets. The workers took their families, wives, children, and elders with them. The workers who had less political awareness carried pictures of the Tsar and religious banners. But they encountered not the Tsar, but the army and police forces armed with swords and bullets. More than 1,000 people were massacred. This January day went down in history as Bloody Sunday. As a result, even the most disadvantaged segments of the Russian working class came to believe that there was no hope for the Tsar. The news of Bloody Sunday spread rapidly throughout the country. Thousands of workers went on strike in the major industrial centers. Russia had never before witnessed a workers' uprising on this scale. In some regions, the peasants also rose up. 2/3 of Russia's provincial population had lost their land to wealthy landowners and worked at these lands as agricultural laborers. Among them, some demanded land, while others were looting and burning their masters' homes. In this period, the Soviets were born. They emerged as the beginnings of new power and new forms of organization for revolutionary action. The Party of the Bolsheviks. Naturally, this movement was only able to establish its presence and structure with a driving force, which operates as a revolutionary entity, a party. This party was the Social Democratic Labor Party of Russia. A part of this party was opposed from the very beginning that there should be no political demands of the working class. That is, the idea that the struggle is sufficient for the promotion of the economic interests of the workers, without questioning the policies of the big bourgeoisie and the ruling class. Representatives of the IE revolutionary line were called Bolsheviks. Others were called Mensheviks. The Bolsheviks formed a party separate from their fierce struggle against the forces of opportunism, the Communist Party. The leader of the Bolsheviks was Vladimir Ulyanov, who went down in history as one of the greatest revolutionary figures of all time, as Lenin.
Months of revolution sometimes educate citizens more quickly and fully than decades of political stagnation.
The bourgeoisie of 1905 was no longer the progressive bourgeoisie of the bourgeois revolutions of the 18th and 19th centuries. Capitalism had transitioned into imperialism, which was characterized by a period of global reaction. Taking into account the objective development of capitalism in Russia and internationally, the Bolsheviks devised a strategic plan to address two significant issues. In a democratic bourgeois revolution, the proletariat would not align with the bourgeoisie in the future. Secondly, the alliance with the small and medium-sized peasantry groups was the guarantee that the leadership of the movement would rest with the working class. Weapons take the stage. On August 1, 1914, the First World War, the largest and most devastating war in history, began. The contradictions between imperialist powers were so severe that there was no other way to resolve them. The war was caused by two sets of alliances between different states. The first alliance was led by Germany and Austria-Hungary, while the other was led by Britain and France. Russia was in the second alliance. The Bolsheviks, Serbian Social Democrats, Bulgarian Revolutionary Socialists, Romanian Left Social Democrats, and German Left Internationalists, led by Karl Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg, were the only ones who stayed loyal to the interests of the working class and the internationalist stance. Other workers and social democrats parties of the period initially agreed to reject armaments, but they ultimately betrayed the interests of the workers. They surrendered to the enemy and to the ruling class of their own nation. The continuous defeats of the Russian army on the front lines, along with the loss of troops and territory, incited anger among the Russian people who were enduring the consequences of the war. Some supporters of the Tsar sought assistance from Germany. It drew the ire of industrialists and bankers who had sided with Britain. For them, the war represented significant profits and gains, and they believed it should be pursued until its conclusion. Down with Tsarism. In February 1917, Russian cities were in turmoil. On February 18th, the workers at the Putilov factory went on strike. The factory was manufacturing military equipment. Thousands of workers stood up with the following basic demands: stop the war, down with the Tsar. By February 25th, the number of strikers exceeded 250,000. The strikers defied the harsh Russian winter and took to the snowy streets with red flags in their hands and hearts blazing in their chests. No one could stop them now. In many places, the police weapons were confiscated. In the following days, the strikers set up barricades and began to clash with the soldiers. On February 27th, it became evident that the Tsar's influence was insufficient to impact the course of events, particularly concerning the workers. Soldiers and mariners began to support the workers. The bourgeoisie and their international allies, Britain and France, also desired to overthrow the Tsar. Tsarism was dead. The democratic bourgeois revolution succeeded in Russia, resulting in the formation of a provisional government. But who were the members of this government? The head of government was a prince, and its members were the prominent landowners and industrialists. This was a government controlled by capitalists and landowners.
Those who fought against the Tsarist forces and did not hesitate to shed their blood for the sake of freedom were, of course, not capitalists, but workers, peasants, mariners, and soldiers. Nevertheless, power shifted to the party representing the capitalists. Then that class was holding the power of wealth, organization, and knowledge.
The bourgeois took power. The February Revolution gave birth to one source of bourgeois power, which is the bourgeois government. The Revolution of 1905 gave rise to another source of power, known as the Soviets. Then the revolution may have been defeated, but the imprint of the Soviets was deeply etched in the consciousness of the people. Once again, the Soviets were uniting as powerful entities in the factories, on warships, in trenches, in battalions, and in the army. At the same time, in the villages, countrysides, and towns, people were voting and electing their own representatives to higher Soviets. According to Lenin, Russia experienced a unique situation during this time, known as dual power. On one side, there was the government of the capitalists, and on the other side, there was the power of the armed people, the Soviets. The bourgeois government lacked the authority to dissolve the Soviets. This situation lasted for a long time. Lenin, anticipating its inevitable collapse, believed that it was necessary to persuade the workers to withdraw their support from the provisional government, which was a government representing the bourgeoisie. Imperialist war needs to be understood. It was a destructive and unjust war. The workers had to remove the representatives of the Soviets who supported the provisional government, specifically those who were in favor of the Mensheviks and the socialist revolutionaries. On April 3rd, Lenin returned to Russia from exile in Switzerland. On the platform of the Petrograd train station, a group of soldiers and mariners welcomed Lenin as an honor guard. Thousands of supporters gathered to meet him and get a closer look. The military band was playing the Marseillaise. The workers were filled with emotion and crying. It was a very powerful moment. Here was the man the whole of Russia was talking about. Lenin, the leader of the Bolsheviks, boarded the armored vehicle and spoke to the crowd surrounding him using the slogan, "Long live the Socialist Revolution." The following day, he presented the Bolshevik cadres with a revised outline of the program, the famous April Theses. Lenin was asserting that the crucial issue in every revolution is the question of power. He was responding to the claims of certain Bolsheviks who argued that the democratic bourgeois revolution had not yet been fully carried out, and power has now shifted to the bourgeoisie. This means that the democratic bourgeois revolution was considered complete. The working class should have been united with the semi-proletarians and impoverished peasants in preparation for the socialist revolution. The end of dual power. On May 1, 1917, the Provisional Government announced its commitment to honor the promises made by Tsarism to Russia's Western allies. Russian capitalists were driven by a thirst for power and financial gain. They disregarded the widely supported request for the country to withdraw from the war. Prime Minister Kerensky ordered the Russian army to attack the Austro-Hungarian troops. But the army met a strong counterattack and retreated. Russia had lost 60,000 people. On July 4th, the Bolsheviks organized massive marches in Petrograd. The government and the generals insisted on doing whatever it takes. They desired to maintain their power and position in the imperialist war. To accomplish this, they needed to deliver a powerful blow to the vanguard. They ordered the arrestment of the leaders of the Bolshevik Party. A special unit was formed to assassinate Lenin on sight. In this atmosphere, Orana, the political police of the old Tsarist regime, was still at work. Similarly, the Black Hundreds, founded in 1905, continued to operate in secret. It was an armed nationalist organization that committed massacres against the workers' movement, and they were seeking to restore reactionism in one form or another. The Bolsheviks were experiencing harsh repression, with arrests and murders taking place. But the workers' movement too was organized by a group of vanguard workers. They established armed militant units like the Red Guard of the Petrograd workers. Lenin went underground based on the decision made by the members of the Central Committee of the party. Lenin foresaw that this situation would undergo objective and decisive change, the Great Assault.
Either the bourgeois dictatorship will achieve final victory, or the armed uprising of the workers will be victorious. The situation is very serious. It is clear that at the present moment, any delay in the uprising is tantamount to death.
The Great Assault. The Bolsheviks raised the slogan, "All power to the Soviets." The aim of this slogan was no longer to unmask the provisional government, but to overthrow it. It was the slogan of the revolution. The countdown had begun and nothing could stop it. The plans of the bourgeoisie to strangle the revolution collapsed. On October 25th, as the sun was rising in the early morning hours, the Red Guards, soldiers and mariners loyal to the revolution took control of the bridges spanning the Neva River. The revolutionists had control over the city's telegraph and telephone center, radio station, railway stations, ministries, and the central bank. The Winter Palace, where the provisional government had taken refuge, was surrounded. At 10 o'clock in the morning, the radio and the telegraph carried the following information. The cause for which the people fought, the emergency plan for democratic peace, the liquidation of the property rights of the landlords, the control of production by the workers and the establishment of the Soviet government were achieved. On the same night, the Second All-Russian Congress of Soviets of Workers and Soldiers Deputies gathered. 649 delegates represented 400 Soviets. 390 delegates were Bolsheviks, 160 were Socialist Revolutionists, and 92 were Mensheviks. The first session lasted almost all night. At dawn, it was reported that the Winter Palace was captured and the ministers of the provisional government were arrested. The meeting hall erupted in a storm of slogans and applause. The following declaration addressed to all workers, soldiers, and peasants was voted. Based on the will of the majority of workers, soldiers, and peasants, as well as the successful uprising of the Petrograd Guards, the Congress has assumed power. The Congress also decided as follows. Power in all localities has been transferred to the Soviet representatives of workers, soldiers, and peasants. The Soviet Republic was proclaimed in Russia. The Council of People's Commissars was created as the government of the Soviet state. This government was headed by Lenin. Although there was no response to Russia's proposals to its allies to end the war, the Soviet government decided to initiate peace negotiations with Germany and its allies. On March 3, 1918, peace treaties were signed with Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and Ottoman. First steps. The world's first workers' state was born. The creators of wealth had taken matters into their own hands. The bourgeoisie and high-ranking officials, who are well-educated and politically competent, had been undermining the public sector. As a result, state officials have been replaced. Labor control was expanded to include all sectors of industry, commerce, and finance. The 8-hour working day was introduced. New state bodies were created to manage the economy. All banks and credit institutions were transferred to the ownership of the workers' state. The same was implemented in factories and workshops. Millions of acres of land owned by large landowners were transferred to Soviet control. The initial state farms and production cooperatives were established in rural areas. The church was separated from the state. Basic education was made compulsory. Women have achieved equality with men, not only in terms of suffrage, but also in terms of fair pay for their work. Furthermore, all nationalities in Russia now had equal rights. Strangle the baby in the cradle, Winston Churchill. Shortly before the Socialist Revolution, a major Russian capitalist told journalist John Reed, "Revolution is a malady. Sooner or later, foreign countries will need to intervene in our domestic matters. It is important for all nations to recognize the dangers of Bolshevism and other objectionable ideas such as the dictatorship of the proletariat and the social world revolution." All across the capitalist world, mainstream newspapers, radio stations, and magazines expressed strong opposition towards the revolution. They saw the Bolsheviks as monsters, not human beings. This new idea was not to be adopted by the common people in their own country. In 1918, the Austrian, German, Hungarian, Turkish, British, French, Japanese, American, and other armies started occupying the territory of Soviet Russia.
Товарищи красноармейцы, капиталисты Англии, Америки, Франции ведут войну против России. Они помогают деньгами и военными припасами русским помещикам, которые ведут против советской власти войска из Сибири, Дона, Северного Кавказа, желая восстановить власть царя, власть помещиков, власть капиталистов. Нет, этому не бывать. Красная армия непобедима, ибо она объединила миллионы трудовых крестьян с рабочими, которые научились теперь бороться, научились товарищеской дисциплине, не падают духом, закаляются после небольших поражений, смелее идут на врага, зная, что пришло полное его поражение.
The Venizelos government also sent Greek troops. The Socialist Workers' Party of Greece, later renamed the Communist Party of Greece, promptly denounced the planned intervention of the capitalist countries against Soviet Russia and the deployment of Greek forces. Inside Russia, the counter-revolution was gaining courage and raising its head again. First, the right-wing social revolutionaries and Menshevik, then the pro-czarist generals. The faction of the social revolutionaries on the left was also planning a rebellion against the Soviet government.
Damn your democracies and reigns. Moscow is like an island in the midst of rifles and gunfire. And on this islet, we the hungry, we the unfortunate ones, have one revolver in our hands, Lenin in our heads. Vladimir Mayakovsky.
The bourgeoisie experienced humiliation once again. The workers and peasants, led by the Bolsheviks, defended their revolution heroically and sacrificially. They successfully defeated the attempted foreign invasion and destroyed the counter-revolutionaries. The international impact of the revolution, which gained the support of workers, played a significant role in achieving this success. Strikes and demonstrations were organized in defense of the revolution. Military ships were stopped and the supply of arms and ammunition was blocked. There were also mutinies on the ships participating in the imperialist intervention. On one hand, revolutions occurred in countries such as Germany and Hungary, and there were significant uprisings in Italy and other places. However, none of these movements were successful. In the light of the October Revolution, communist and workers' parties were founded all over the world. In November 1918, the Communist Party of Greece was founded. October Revolution for the Communist Party of Greece, from the day it was founded, has been a beacon of direction, a beacon of action and inspiration. 1917 marked a significant step forward for the working class and its allies, demonstrating their capacity to govern a country. This practice strengthened the communist and militant struggle against the bourgeoisie and the bourgeois state, in either distributing leaflets or using weapons. Between 1917 and 1940, the workers' state implemented a plan to electrify the country. This plan resulted in significant progress in socialist industrial production. In all industrial sectors, production potential was created. In the Second World War, the Soviet people defended workers' power and public property at the cost of their lives. It shattered the war machine of Germany and its allies. This victory reignited the people's faith in the struggle and gave them the strength to persevere in their resistance. The Red Army played a crucial role in emancipation of several states in Europe and bolstered class struggles and national emancipation wars throughout the continent.
From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent. Behind that line lie all the capitals of the ancient states of Central and Eastern Europe. The Communist parties, or fifth columns, constitute a growing challenge and peril to Christian civilization.
In the Second World War, despite suffering significant losses and with a death toll of 20 million, the Soviet Union was able to achieve its goals. This was largely due to the success of centralized planning, which greatly improved their productive power, quickly closed the distance between the capitalist powers, such as the United States, who did not engage in direct conflict on their own territory. The achievements of socialism are key to achieving higher living standards. It was the embodiment of people's imagination and aspirations. Ending the exploitation of individuals by others was a fundamental principle. Starting from the early years, the right to work was guaranteed. From the 1930s onwards, there were efforts to eliminate the social problem of unemployment and poverty. There was a public health system that was free and accessible to all. Insurance, pensions, healthcare, and treatment were entirely the responsibility of the state, with no financial burden on the workers. There was compulsory and free education for all. Recreational activities, cultural activities, sports, and free time for vacations were available. These tremendous efforts to construct a new society also experienced difficulties that a workers' power faced for the first time. After reaching a certain point in history, the Soviets tried to tackle problems by embracing capitalist principles. This resulted in a weakening of socialist relations of production, an expansion of the market, and increased income inequality. Communist consciousness was dealt a blow. This blow was fatal. It was this prescription that was defeated, not socialism. As the Communist Party of Greece, we have learned lessons from the successes and mistakes of socialism in order to raise the red flag lowered from the Kremlin. We have reached very important conclusions. We also examine the experience of our time. The ice has been broken. The road is open. 100 years ago, the path opened and shaped by the victory of the October Revolution is still open. The economy and power are controlled by those who exploit others. The working class is the only driving force of society. Only by harnessing its power can the productive forces reach their full potential in every aspect, benefiting society as a whole and ensuring collective ownership of the means of production. Today, on the basis of the productive potential of our country and the wealth produced in our country, the current needs of our people can only be met in this way. Only by doing this, we can break free from the chains of capitalist ownership and low production can stand up. About the current intensification of different imperialist groups' confrontation, only the working class has the ability to utilize the power of the general population. The power of the working class will free the country from imperialist unions such as the EU and NATO, and unilaterally cancel all debts. It is in their best interest to oppose the imperialist nations and protect the interests of their own states and people. The demarcation of borders and defense of sovereign rights are essential for ensuring peace among nations. It is also crucial in the fight against exploitation and for promoting political and revolutionary activity by progressive leaders. The October Revolution clearly proved the indispensable role of the political and revolutionary activity of the vanguard. The Communist Party plays a crucial role not only in the process of socialist revolution, but also in transforming communities, building a communist society, and achieving ultimate victory in the struggle. A wealth of action and experience from the past century still carries relevance in the 21st century. It equips us to actively participate in the significant battle that lies ahead, shows us we have all the essential tools to challenge the outdated capitalist system. The final victory over the capitalist barbarism is the best way to commemorate the October Revolution and its goals. Socialism is the only answer to capitalist barbarism.